Welcome back to a special edition of the show coming to you from New Delhi. We're speaking with India's Minister of External Affairs, Pranab Mukherjee, in his first interview to the international media since the attacks on Mumbai last November. We continue our conversation on the relationship of India with the United States. Has the issue of Kashmir become too much of a raw nerve for both Pakistan and India? Recently, the UK Foreign Minister David Miliband was in India, and he made a major statement on the issue of Kashmir, saying that the resolution of the dispute over Kashmir would help deny extremists in the region one of their main calls to arms and allow Pakistani authorities to focus more effectively on tackling the threat on their western borders.
I am afraid this has nothing to do with Kashmir. Terror attacks are to be taken separately, and it is a part of the fight against global terrorism. If somebody wants to link it up, as I mentioned earlier, with the resolution of the Kashmir, so-called Kashmir problem, to us there is no problem. People of Kashmir are regularly voting. Very recently, in a massive number, they have voted. There is elected government. They have their constitution. Therefore, I am not going to the debate of it, but the fact of the matter is, Mr. Foreign Secretary of UK has made his observations, and during my talk also I made it quite clear to him that we do not share his perception.
Now, India's on the issue of the US relations with India, India's lobby power in the US seems to have increased a lot. It seems to have become far more focused. Some people are saying it's almost comparing to the Israeli lobby, that exists. Is that a fair assessment?
I am not agreeing with that type of assessment, but surely I would agree that our relationship between India and USA has increased substantially. And the latest example is the signing of Civil Nuclear Cooperation and the amendment of their Atomic Energy Act. And this Civil Nuclear Cooperation Agreement has removed the isolation of India in the nuclear trade, which we are suffering for the last 34 years.
Minister, how do you see, with India's rising status on the world stage, it might actually become some kind of negotiator, some kind of mediator, a bigger voice in some of the conflicts taking place around the world?
In fact, in our modest efforts, we try to maintain peace, tranquility, not only in our immediate neighborhood, but also in an extended neighborhood. I am just giving you an example. When there were trouble in one of our Himalayan country, neighbor, Nepal, we persuaded the political parties which resorted to guns and violence, Maoists in Nepal, that you give up violence, participate in the mainstream of the national political activities. They agreed, listened to our advice, and now in collaboration with the other democratic parties, they have formed the government, they are leading the government. Therefore, in our own persuasive way, we try to help them. Our approach is, in our extended neighborhood, we are believing one philosophy, that we can grow together.
Now, I was in India when Hillary Clinton, as First Lady, with President Bill Clinton, came to India, and she is now, as the new Secretary of State, has called and said she wants to take the relationship between India and the US to a new level. What do you see that new level to be?
Of course, I had a talk with her, telephonic conversation. I congratulated her, and she also wished that we would like to work together. Relationship is expanding. It will be multifaceted. It is already multifaceted, and naturally it will be further deepened, further expanded. That is the new level she is talking of.
Now, interestingly, India's voice is being heard more on the world stage, even on the political stage, not just economic. And when the attacks on Gaza happened, Israel launched its attacks, India was very quiet. It didn't condemn the attacks in any way when other countries were taking
I am afraid it is not correct. I can tell you precisely from 27th of December till the first week of January, we have issued as many as 5 statements, and very strong statements, both from the government and from, of course, the major political parties in India, including the ruling party, Indian National Congress. Our relationship with Palestinians are quite old, and India was one of the very first few countries which recognized and strongly advocated for the clearly defined separate stand for land for Palestine. Therefore, and even President Abbas visited India in last October. Therefore, we do not subscribe to that views. We have condemned, and we have condemned strongly the disproportionate retaliation which Israel has done, and as a result of which innocent civilians have become the victim, not the perpetrators of attack.
National elections are coming up in India, and of course you're a leading figure in the Congress Party, a veteran politician here, highly respected. How do you think the Congress Party will do this time?
I'm hopeful. Of course, as a party man, always we work for the success of the party. But what I feel, the latest provincial assembly elections results indicate that Congress has a good chance.
Of course, a lot of people are looking to the economic state of their own countries to see where their governments might go. In India, you're actually a member of the Board of Governors at one time of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, and of course India to some degree was sheltered from the financial distress the world has had. At least it's got, many people feel, a better buffer and better potential. How do you see the shape of India economically in the coming years, looking at what's going on around?
Well, you know, for the last few years we are having steady economic growth, and our annual average GDP growth was 9%. We cannot insulate ourselves totally from the global development, and therefore the financial crisis will have some impact on our economy, and which is already felt in the sense this year our projected growth has come down from 9% to around 7%. Exact figure will be known after a couple of months. But at the same time, our economy is not going to be affected as adversely as many other countries, because our economy is directed substantially till today towards domestic demand, domestic expenditure, and to that extent, because India is a developing country.
Of course, India's growth is phenomenal. A lot of people predict within 4 decades, India's economy will be bigger than the United States. But the disparity is still huge here between the rich and poor. To what extent, in that period of time, could you see some kind of equality emerging, some kind of trickle down at least, that there is less of a gap between the rich and the poor?
We don't believe no longer in the trickle down theory. We do believe that poverty, deprivation, lack of development are to be attacked frontally.
One thought, as we do this interview, you're about to head off to Sri Lanka, which of course is going through a bit of a transition now with the government making some headway against the Tamil Tigers and taking over a lot of the areas the Tamil Tigers held. How do you see the relationship with Sri Lanka going, and how do you regard what's happening right now with Sri Lankan government's push against the rebels?
We are concerned about the plight of the civilian populations. We have no sympathy for any terrorist organization, and LTT is a banned terrorist organization. It is banned in India because one of the top leader of them is an accused in the Rajiv Gandhi murder case. He was involved in the assassination of former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. But we are concerned about the plight of civilians who has become the hapless victims of the armed conflict between LTT and Sri Lankan armed forces. We are requesting the government of Sri Lanka that you ensure the safety, security of these civilians, ensure them food, shelter and medicine which they are in utter need. In addition to that, what we are advocating, because in 1987 an agreement was signed between India and Sri Lanka to ensure the ethnic rights of the minorities in Sri Lanka within the framework of Sri Lankan constitution and maintaining the territorial integrity. We are suggesting that please ensure the implementation of 1987 Act, and where there is an important component of self-governance to the people of the ethnic minorities, so that the legitimate aspirations of the ethnic minorities are fulfilled within the framework of Sri Lankan constitution without affecting its territorial integrity. We are trying to achieve that.
Minister, I wish you a safe trip. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us. On the next show, we speak live with the former US President Jimmy Carter, who's been advocating a role for the Palestinian Islamic group Hamas in peace talks. You'll be able to put your questions directly to him, so join us for that. From me and the team in India, we'll see you next time.